Please stand. I'd like to ask Councilwoman Miles if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. The Villa Park City Council and staff welcome you to this evening's meeting, and we encourage your participation. If you wish to address the City Council, please complete and submit a speaker card and provide it to our city clerk/city manager before the meeting, so promptly. And the speaker cards can be found at the very entrance in the back of the room here, and speakers will be limited to a period of 5 minutes. Do we have any speaker cards yet? Okay. Let's go ahead and proceed with presentations. We have the City Investment Earnings Update presentation.
Okay, you'll remember that several meetings ago, Mayor Pro Tem Pitts raised the issue after reviewing the monthly investment report and had some questions, and specifically with regards to our trust fund that we've established. So with that, I've asked Frank Davies and our finance director and Bill Underwood, the chair of the Investment Advisory Committee, to make a presentation and come back and give you some details. So I'll let Frank take over from here.
As Steve mentioned, Bill Underwood, the chairman of the Investment Advisory Committee, will be making a presentation. And so I asked him to come up here now. There's also some material that I'll be handing to each of you that Bill will briefly be going over, but it's more for your information for a later time to fully digest. And if you have questions afterwards, you could either ask Bill or myself on those. Go ahead, Bill.
So Frank's got a, I'm Bill Underwood, 39-year resident of Villa Park, and a chairman of the Investment Advisory Committee. I've got a folder there which might scare you away given my brief time that I'm going to present in, but it's a homework reading material for the investment strategies of Villa Park is one of the packages. On the top is an outline of what is covered in there. And then the second one is a first annual performance report from PARS on the pension trust. And I'd like to recognize Dennis Yu, Executive Vice President. Would you stand up a moment, Dennis? Who is the original person who was on this account as we got it set up. Executive Vice President of PARS, lives nearby in Irvine. With that, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and council members, I would like to take tonight to give a quick first annual update on the PARS Investment Performance Trust. It's a restricted, irrevocable pension trust to offset CalPERS rising pension contributions. And we have 1 year of that. On the material that you have there, just so you know how briefly I'm going to cover, I'm just going to cover the very outline of number one, how much so far, our annual performance update. With that, the rest of the material talks about the strategies, the 4 investment strategies that we follow on Villa Park. To refresh your memory on that, also has some, and that's for, also talks about the newer long-term diversified trust, which has a little different flavor for your oversight, and we want to talk about that just briefly. And then the PARS First Annual Pension Fund is the presentation that looks like this. That is a very professional presentation. Is the first one that we've received from PARS and has year-to-date and inception-to-date performance figures. So with that, if you turn towards the outline of the first bullet points there, how much so far, annual performance update. Our inception to date, we established the trust in November 2017, but it didn't get funded till a year ago, June, in June 2018, and we made 6.82% on that in the first year. So that's a little different number than you see on our short and medium-term funds, because the short and medium-term funds are limited to a 5-year perspective, are limited to Federal Reserve insured We can't take a market risk, so we hold those to maturity. So in the current investment climate of today, when you're in that period, you're earning about 2% or less or a little bit more, but in that level. When they set up the investment trust, they got a Section 115 IRS exemption, and the law talks about it. We can invest in anything that the prudent man philosophy could invest in. The counterpoint is balanced off with that's an irrevocable trust. So when you put money into that has to go towards pension or other pension benefits, employment benefits, or of that nature. We cannot pull that out and use it for other funds. So that keeps the state feeling that the cities are not risking funds, because as you know, the three principles of the state for operational funds investment, number one is, in these order, is safety of the principal. Number two is liquidity. And third is yield. So therefore, those become very conservative investments, very low yielding oftentimes, because you have to have some risk to get some yield. In this case, in the pension fund, we can invest in any of those, but we use a prudent philosophy, and they also urge the use of a professional investment firm. So we have a professional investment manager under PARS. They use as their custodian Union Bank, and the investment firm is Highmark Investments. And actually the executive vice president of Highmark, which is San Francisco based, lives over here in Tustin, and he handles our account. So we have close contact with Keith Stripping. So with that, the calendar year to date, this most recent 6 months up until June, December to June, we earned 11.63%. So 12%. So in this first year, we did fairly well. We had about $100,000 in it for most of the time, and earned 6.82%. Added $100,000 late in the period, so we now have $200,000 on it. But in the first piece, we've earned. If you look down in the next one on B, we use the moderate portfolio. They have 5 choices to choose from. One is capital appreciation. That's primarily equities, heavy on the equities. And then a balanced one, which is heavier than the middle, a little bit lighter on the equities, but still majority equities. And then we picked the middle one, or you picked the middle one, we put it up to you, as the moderate one. And that's about a 50-45 split, equities and fixed income, 5% cash. And then there are 2 less than that. There's moderately conservative and then very conservative. As you can imagine, the yield curve on it, and you'll see it in the fact sheet, the yield curve, you get the highest yield of the capital appreciation, and then the balanced, and then the moderate. So, and then lesser. You also limit your risk on the downside, of course, by doing that. So that's where we are. With that particular fund, the moderate portfolio record, their 10-year annual returns by Highmark was 8.35%. So a decent yield. They go up by about 1% or so as you go up, and the higher ones go down by about 1%. However, the new part for your oversight, and this one gets good oversight by layers, and I'll talk about that. We have an investment manager who looks at them daily. We have the city manager and finance director get reports monthly, so they look at them. The investment advisory committee looks at them quarterly, and then you have to make a decision annually about whether you want to put more funds into that. Right now, our strategy was that there would be $100,000 a year put into it for 4 years to try to get our funding ratio at PERS up from 76% to between 80 and 85% would be the maximum. And of course, that is a moving target, because CalPERS keeps admitting that their investments aren't quite up, so their 20-year perspective of earning 7% a year or 7.5% a year keeps getting recognized that it's really lower, and the burden comes back to the city to put more money in. And luckily, we're in pretty good shape compared to most cities. But some cities, which are only maybe 30% funded, and they have to make up 70%, and it goes up, and their numbers are bigger than ours, it eats into their other services budget. The police and fire and roads And so this program is to try to moderate that and earn money in a riskier, in a more open environment, in a very diversified, long-term, 20-year kind of strategy, and get that money to go in. And that's why the legislature passed that rule for this one. Okay, probably more than you want to know, but what you might want to look at is in the worst of times, 2008, this fund lost 22%, but it's a long-term diversified fund. So in 2009, the next year, it gained 21%. And in the following year, in 2010, it gained 12%. So we use a actively managed fund versus a passive fund. So that means Highmark is actively managing and reacting to that. So with that, enjoy your reading of the PARs. It's good reading, not as sleepy. And then the one I wrote up may be a little more sleep-inducing, but that talks in 2 pages, is the essence of the investment strategies that we present you. And we'll come back with an investment policy statement every 2 years. So we'll come back next year with a investment policy statement. A very thick document. So I tried to reduce that down to the essence and let you see what I've said tonight. Any questions?
Bill, quick question.
Yes.
This is as aggressive as we can be with this investment, because, you know, we set aside this money to catch up, you know, on the PARs and, PARs. And I'm just wondering, is this, with the market the way it's been over the last couple of years and so forth, is this is as aggressive as we can get, or you feel comfortable with doing at this point to get a better rate of return on this investment so that we can buy down on this as quickly as possible?
So I sit on 2 other investment committees, one for the college and one for the Rotary Foundation. And almost every one, investment advisors that come into us say, it's kind of getting to be a little broken record now, but the recession is coming. The recession is coming. So that means we're going to go down. So one of the things I look for is being not too stretched out that we don't go down a great deal. So no, this is not as aggressive as we can be. The most aggressive portfolio would be the capital appreciation portfolio. And the second one below that would be the balanced, which I kind of lean to, but the committee and staff lean more towards a moderate. So we went to the middle one, the moderate one. And then the 2 lower ones, the conservative and moderately conservative one, were, I thought, too conservative on the yield curve. But the second one that the investment advisors all talk about, not only is there a recession coming, but they say get used to making 2 to 4% instead of the old days where you expected 10 or 12% back. So the opposite side of that is get used to losing some amount as well. So if you're down at that level and you go down, or maybe there's no floor on that. So personally, I think it's a good starting out part. We kind of agreed with PARs when we started in. This is not one to arbitrarily move back and forth because it's a long-term investment.
Right.
So I think and the council will turn over. So I think if we could keep looking at it and keep recommending, depending on the situation the council has. In this case, we're, as a city, are in pretty good shape in funding there are a lot of cities that would love to be 76% funded already. So we're getting up. The actuarials, when I served on the grand jury for a year, I went deep into what the actuarial formulas were for the pension fund for Orange County. And it's almost a wild guess. There are like 45 assumptions they make in the formula. So when they say 76% funded, that means they're predicting how many people are going to die, how many people are going to join, what the market's going to do, way more variables than I would want. So it's a soft number, and therefore you don't want to get more funded than 80, 85% because things are going to go the other way as well. There were 2 cities, if you read Morlock's report, that are overfunded in their pension fund. One of those was Lake Forest, and we visited Lake Forest in our search for having the right vendor for PARs to do this, and they had adopted the treasurer at Mesa Water, who is also the mayor of Lake Forest. He opted to go the most
Aggressive.
active one. So over the past, he's been in, I think, 4 years. Over that period of time, that was a pretty good period rise for the stock market. So he's now overfunded in that, and it's because it's an irrevocable restricted, they have to live with that, so.
Okay.
So the long answer to your short question is yes, I feel comfortable with where we are today. Is it, can you make more money in your personal account by going all equities? Yes, absolutely. After one, I always have to hold my tongue at the college. I'd say, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have, instead of giving you guys money, I should have kept the money. I could have given you more money because I was willing to take the risk, and generally a public entity is not wanting, is knowing they're dealing with other people's money, so you're cautious. Any other questions? If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to call Frank or I, we'd have glad to have a one-on-one session that you could ask the embarrassing questions that you wanted to understand more. Or two, if you wanted, as you look through the PARS presentation, you wanted to have us back and we'd do a full presentation of our first annual results, we could do that as well, given your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bill, Frank, thank you, gentlemen, so much for your efforts in keeping our city on the right side of the equation. Looks like we're going in the right direction. Thank you so much. Next presentation, though not on the agenda, that's just a clerical error, is we have representatives from the Orange Unified School District. We have Kathy Moffett and our board member and Superintendent Hanson, as well as staff. So please come forward, and love to hear an update on how things are going. Welcome, and hopefully the new school year is treating you well. It looks like, by all accounts, things are going in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Rossini and City Council members. We appreciate being here this evening to give you an update on our facilities. And we'll be talking this evening about the new track and field, as well as Measure S Science Center in Phase 2. There's a lot of construction, a lot of exciting things happening on the campus, so we want to make sure that we can give you the update and tell you a little bit about our progress moving forward. And I want to thank our board member, Ms. Kathy Moffett, who's with us this evening as well, to show her support for the city as well as the school district. So would you like to say a few words? Yeah.
I'll let the staff and Dr. Hanson fill in all the questions, because I know everywhere I go, people ask about the fields and the construction. That really warms my heart, because it shows that everybody cares about it. And so they have all the facts at the ready, so I'll let them tell you about that. But I'll tell you about a pleasurable experience I had today. I was over at one of our elementary schools. They were having a validation visit from a representative of the California School Boards Association, because they are a finalist for the California School Boards Association Golden Bell Award for a program that they have whereby the students learn how to, this is 4th and 5th graders, they learn how to program drones so that they can take off and do certain planned maneuvers and then come back and land. And they program that all on their iPads. And it's a very popular, as you might imagine, program. And it started at California Elementary School and has spread to some of our other elementary schools, because people have seen, oh boy, that looks really, really neat and nifty and all that kind of thing. And so we're very proud of California Elementary School, as well as many of our other schools. They were also, while the validation team was there, Apple Computer was also there, because they were filming what was going on, because this is a result of a partnership that school has with Apple Computer, and those devices are the devices that they use to control the drones. So it's a cool thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add to Ms. Moffett that one of the programs we have at all of our intermediate schools, all of our middle schools, is the STEM Action Lab. And so that drone experience that many of our students have has to do with aviation. And each of those STEM Action Labs has additional simulators and can build on that experience. So Saravilla has a lot of the same components that were just described here. So I'd like to go ahead and just dive right in with our facilities presentation. And I have our Chief Business Official, Mr. Dave Rivera, and Scott Harvey, who is our Senior Executive Director of Administrative Services and Facilities. And there's a PowerPoint that they put together that provides you with the overview of all the projects that are going on at Villa Park High School. So, Mr. Rivera.
My name is David Rivera. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. Mayor, Honorable Councilman, and the Villa Park community. I'm happy to be here and give you an update on what's happening in the city. I've been with the districts about 16 months. Over those 16 months, I have signed contracts which have committed more than $220 million in our facilities. That includes Kelly Stadium, the STEM centers, and the field. So we have a short presentation to review with you on Measure S and the fields, and we're going to cover some of the highlights, what has happened since the last time we were here. We've been advised by our council to stay close to the presentation because of pending litigation as we resolve the field issues, but we've tried to be as complete in the information in our presentation. And Mr. Harvey, can you start the presentation?
So I don't have a clicker, but I guess I'll just say next slide. Is that how it works? So we can go to the next slide. So just to give you just a visual look at the Science Center, if people in the audience haven't seen the renderings, this is the front off of Taft Avenue, just right at the east side of the school. And then the next picture is the back rear view. As you can see, there's some upgraded landscape, and the building is pretty simple, but very state-of-the-art in terms of science classrooms and technology itself. So that's just a quick overview of the look of the center. And then going into the update, this is a quick synopsis just of the project for those who may not have seen this before. The new 44,000 square foot science center will include 12 laboratory classrooms, 2 general science classrooms, and 2 medically fragile suites. As discussed before with this council, the project also includes the construction of a new pickup and drop-off area, an entire refacing of the landscape in front of the school. The school will look completely different in 1 year, so just note that. As a result of the parking lot changes, Nichols Street will be made a three-way stop, allowing for a new driveway and new access to Villa Park High School through different avenues. The plan for the improvements to the city street and traffic light system were approved last week by Mr. Akram here and Steve Franks. So we're very happy to be headed in that partnership towards a safer Taft and a safer Nichols entrance and exit through there. Did you have a question, Mr. Collicutt?
It's currently a 3-way stoplight. You're going to be making it 4-way, correct?
Correct, sorry,
Okay.
yes, thank you. So it'd be going to a 4-way stop with what we call Spartan Way is now a through street into Nichols. So there's some turning restrictions there, and we've gone over that in detail with your staff to make sure that it's safe. So what we can do is we can send out the plans, or I can have Mr. Frank share the plans on the signaling and all of that with the council if you'd like. But we had a lot of discussion and made sure that it's going to be safe and it's going to alleviate a lot of the traffic that you see lining up for left-hand turns into the space especially. So we're really excited to have that happen. So that's, you can go to the next slide. That's just in a nutshell what the project is about. And then the update on the construction itself. Project schedule was well underway. The structural infrastructure on the building is happening right now. So if you drive by, you can see big holes in the ground. Those are where our main columns are going to be. You can see the elevator pit that's been dug out and cemented. So you can kind of see the inner workings of where the structure will be. And then pretty soon we'll be pouring the footings and setting structural steel. So we're actually about a month ahead of schedule. We were going to demo the building in June when school was out, but we talked to the staff, figured that we could, it's just one building we're taking down. It's not a huge building, so we weighed the options and decided to demo early. So we demoed in May, and we were able to move the students out on schedule, which was during spring break. So the students were moved into interim housing just on the backside of campus. So the parking lot and other street improvements will take place during the summer months of 2020. Summer school and other campus-based activities will be moved off campus. We just felt that there's too much going on in the campus to have summer school and some other events. Now, sporting events, as far as the soccer use of the field, should not be changed at all, and practicing schedule for PE and for athletics should not change during that time. So we can look at the next picture. The next slide is just what I was describing. This is today's condition there. So, some of that's been, is no longer framed, it's actually poured in. So that's what you see on site. It's not an archaeological dig, it's our building, taking its shape in terms of structural. So we go to the next slide, we can start talking about the synthetic track and field. Are there any questions about the building itself and the timeline or any of the impacts?
It looked like there's a basement. Are there classrooms below?
No basement.
grade le- Okay.
No, that's just the elevator shaft that you're seeing.
Okay.
The elevator pit, and then those are actually the foundation for the footing. So
Okay.
all that will be poured in. It's a pretty large
Yeah.
footprint, and because of the soils, you have to go very deep here. As soon as I know some of us both know, it's hard to dig holes here in Villa Park because of the clay and everything else. So we had to go extra deep to make sure that we have a good foundation there, and that's what the soils report had us do. So, any other questions on Measure S? I could also just hit upon Phase 2. I know, I didn't touch on Phase 2 as much because we're still in the process, but the plan was approved on July 25th by our board to go forward with a new 2-story building in the place of the 500 building on campus, if people are familiar with where that's at. It's on the east side of campus, the easternmost building. It's where the science labs were located. So that will be replaced by a 2-story, 18-classroom building. We'll also be renovating the 100-200 building, which is the staple 2-story building in the front of campus. We'll be removing some staircases from the front, putting some security measures in, but making sure to not make the school look overguarded or prison-like in any way. We're going to make sure that it's designed very nicely so that it enhances the look of the building besides take away. New elevators will be added to the back side of the building. One elevator, I should say, for passenger. Now we have a wheelchair lift, it's just a single lift, but this will be an actual passenger elevator. So bathrooms will be renovated in that building as well as other minor renovations. So that's the Phase 2 kind of nutshell.
Scott, real quick, the timeline you said October 2020?
For the opening of we can go back to the next slide so you can kind of see the next before that. You can kind of see where we're looking at. So construction continues through December 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So not this December,
So not
following December.
For some reason I had originally October, but so December is the target date.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it had moved just a little bit because of some of the CEQA process we were delayed a little bit on that, but we wanted to make sure that with the city especially that we had everything worked out and that we could go forward with the plans that we had without any issue. So there was a little bit of delay there, but we've caught up for the most part with that. I think November was the original, or late October, early November, but that's why you may have seen the October date.
Great.
All right, then going on to the track and field, we can go to the next slide. As communicated last fall of 2018, we were just getting to about a month and a half into construction at that time with the field. So that was the last major update that we had in the field with where we showed you slides and things like that. We communicated at the September meeting that it was our hope to open the field to students for practices in December of 2018. Unfortunately, heavy rains forced us to move back the schedule to mid-February. In terms of the Phase 2 of the project, comprised of the addition of our new ADA walkways, new fencing, and other improvements to the site, we had hoped to start work during the summer. We were going to give the students some time to be on the field, shut down around the time that school ended, and then construct the ADA pathways and fencing. And we discovered undulations on the field in February, and we decided not to let students or community use that field until we could test and find out what was causing the multiple undulations. Now, I'm not just saying a bump on the field or minor undulation. So if you look at the next slide, you could see this is a actual survey map for Villa Park High School's field as of March 2019, right after we started seeing these undulations. Based on the key lifted on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see that the undulation exists in almost every area in the field. Anywhere green, that's over 2%. Now, code says that for fields of this size, you can't go over 2% slope. In some cases, they like to keep to about 1%, but code says 2%. But you can see all the areas that were over that 2% undulation, including major areas over by the jump pits and at the end of the track. That's actually the east side of the track that you can see that heavy red, and some isolated areas that have that as well. So there's quite a bit of noticeable undulation to the point where we did not feel that it was safe to have students on that. So what do we do? What was the timeline? Going on to the next slide. So I'll just go through this quick. I won't read all this. There's a lot to see. And we'll get you these slides as well so that you can have them printed off. But once the undulations were clearly observed on February 22nd, district staff and cabinet felt it best not to allow students, like we talked about. We immediately asked the contractor to repair these areas. We didn't understand what it was going to take yet, but we knew it needed to be tested, and we knew that there needed to be repairs done. So in order to help with the soil mitigation and repair efforts, the district engaged in additional soils testing and survey work to determine what may be causing the undulating asphalted areas. This is roughly around the last time we presented an update to the council. So we did come back on April 23rd to this council, and we gave a quick update that at that time we were undergoing testing because the field was not open at that time, and there was some question, well, why is that? And so we want to explain why we changed the time frame, why we didn't come back earlier, but we did obviously have the April 23rd meeting, so we did give some update, but a lot had happened since April 23rd. So by May, it was determined that possibly removing the top portion of the asphalt on the track and field could repair the issue. Soils engineers cautioned to test the paving equipment first to given the high moisture content retained in the soil. You could see on the next slide, upon testing May 20th of 2019, the asphalt equipment failed, and paving machines basically were sinking into the field surface. You can see here with that tape measure, that's about 3 inches, in some cases 4 inches. If you look closely at the picture on the far left-hand corner, you'll see the clear undulation in the field from the equipment. It sank. So after additional testing in June after the failure, a full mitigation of the soil, including a concrete treatment of the dirt, was recommended. So what that means is you basically remove all of the surface, remove all of the asphalt, re-excavate the entire field, mix the base layer of the compacted soil with concrete. They used to treat it with concrete and lime, but lime's no longer used. But concrete was used or recommended in this case to create an unpenetrable layer. Basically what they're telling us in the reports is that the rainwater got to this field so badly that it created a completely different soil than we worked with when we first did the project. When we first put down the asphalt, we had full compaction of the soils. We had full release from the soils engineers to go ahead and lay the asphalt, put your base down, lay the asphalt, you have the compaction you need. So when we went back to test it, we were seeing that the compaction that we witnessed had completely changed. So the physical environment of the soil was completely different because of the amount of rain. So you could see the pictures of the test there. So we created a new schedule. We had to obviously talk to the contractors. We can't go into all of the discussions given our legal was involved, and I think Mr. Rivera mentioned that we're not going to get too far into how we're following up legally on this, but we are taking every action possible to make sure that we're getting to the bottom of what happened and the responsibility issue of it all. So going forward with the next schedule, if you can go to the next slide, the new schedule is based on repair work currently underway. We had, as part of the schedule that you may have seen that I went through pretty quickly, on July 25th, there was an emergency resolution that was passed to use Byram Davey to do repairs to the field. Byram Davey is a well-known contractor that does fields. They're doing Fred Kelly Stadium, in fact, and a lot of different type of projects that involve outdoor use and parks and things. But one thing that they're very good at and they're well known at is concrete treatment. And they work with certain soils engineers that we work with in the past on other projects, other similar projects. So we got very confident with the fact that Byram Davy was going to be able to solve this problem, not just repair it, but do a permanent repair. So no matter what rain may hit that field, and we all know, if we know Villa Park High School, it is in the FEMA floodplain. So it's going to have, if rain hits that area, you're going to have a lot of moisture in that area. So having said that, we wanted to make sure that in this repair, it was a permanent repair. So that's why we went with Byram Davy, and that's why we're very pleased with what we're seeing so far. So we've concrete treated the soil, and that was completed as of September 20th. Paving activities began this week as road base was added to prepare for asphalt work, which will be starting next week. The paving will continue through mid-October. Once paving is completed and cures for a couple of weeks, turf installation will begin. The same turf, same design and colors will be utilized in the repair phase. Track surfacing with the same colors and markings will follow. Turf installation will be completed by January. Finally, the ADA improvements that we talked about will be started right after the track installation is complete, or kind of overlapping in that track installation, and continue through March of 2020. And our hope is to open up that field April of 2020 to full district-sponsored events. So if you see the last two slides, you can go through these. These are just the removal of the turf on that, the surface there of the asphalt, and the second is the actual work that was completed. So we're pretty far along past these pictures now, where we have base in place, like I said, and we're getting ready to pave. So unfortunately, it's one of those things where we just, it was hard to take, it was hard to see the undulation and see that we had to potentially restart this project again. But we've had a lot of support from our board. Obviously, like I said, we're running through every possibility that we can to find out the causes and why this happened. But the main goal for the district is to get this field open for our students and our athletes in our community, so that it can be a benefit to this community. So that's the update. If you have any questions, I can take those now, or Mr. Rivera.
Before we take questions, I just wanted to say thank you to Miss Moffett from the school board, and Dr. Hanson, Mr. Rivera, and you, Mr. Harvey, for coming forward and obviously dealing with a very delicate and difficult issue. Thank you for once again responding to my invitation, as you did back in April. Obviously, the community shares in your excitement about the progress with the STEM lab, the 300 building, 100 building, 500 building, phase 2 coming forward. What we also share in your frustration and disappointment, and really look forward to hopefully finding the fast forward button and getting our track opened. I know the sports clubs and the football program, track program, everybody is really in a bit of a pinch, but we thank you for everything you're doing. And at this point, I'd like to open up for questions if anybody has any. Excuse me.
The soil treatment, it's like a soil cement treatment that you're installing?
If you're familiar with slurry, if you've ever seen a slurry over a trench or something like that, where they put electrical down, they'll put like a cement, a very thin cement, very watery cement over that trench, so that if you're ever digging, you hit that concrete, you don't hit the electrical pipe, right? So it's similar to that, except it's thicker. So it's like a very thick slurry along that. So it's an impenetrable base layer.
How thick is the slurry set?
It's about a foot.
Oh, okay. Significant,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's a foot, and then you have, obviously, the soil compacted on that, and then you have base material, road base, and then you put the asphalt on top of that.
The soil that you're going to be putting in, is that native soil or imported fill?
It's both. So in order to get the moisture content right, they brought in some infill. But we were able to we let the soil dry out. So if you saw the field like, nothing's happening, what are they doing? I even heard someone say, why don't you hire people to go out there and act like they're doing something on the field? I said, no, that's not the best use of the taxpayer money, but we'll make sure that we do the right thing. So we had to let it dry out a little bit in order to try to use as much of the native we could. And we brought some infill in, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Who would we address concerns about when trucks are exiting that driveway?
You can address that to my office, to the facilities office.
We have, Bill Taryn has been watching that, and Scott gets regular phone calls with us.
Yeah.
Because we have some, they like to get on a job pretty early. So we've had some discussions, and Scott's been very responsive anytime we've asked him, and he gets on the contractors real quick. So any questions, concerns can be brought to either Scott's attention or the City Hall. We will address them, because our responsibility, once they leave that school grounds, that they become, they use our city roads. So we're concerned about them at that point.
And there has been a lot of trucks lately, especially the last week or two, with the amount of base that we're bringing in. So we apologize for any inconvenience for any of the
Well, I know
residents.
it's frustrating, but that's
Yeah.
not what, so I was almost hit head-on today
Really?
by one of the trucks exiting at a rapid speed. And because he was traveling so quickly, and I know they're big trucks in the turn radius, but he was all the way, it was a bad scenario.
We will
So
talk to the contractor immediately
Just
tomorrow morning about this.
wanted to make sure,
Yep.
and I saw his window, and I totally get it, because the kids weren't nearby, and I was the only car, so I get that he was probably really excited about exiting and not having to wait for a whole bunch of people, but
I could write a book on truck drivers, but yeah.
please.
Didn't they have flagmen out there at one time?
They
There-
should.
There
Holding up
wasn't one
traffic?
at this time.
They should have flagmen if there's multiple. So if there's one truck on its own, they usually will not have a flagman. But if there's multiple deliveries where you're saying, okay, I've got to stop traffic, then yes, there should be flag people out there. But there should be, regardless, even if there's one truck, but usually that's the case. If it's one, they'll kind of let it go. But in code-wise, you should have a flagman anytime you have.
Dualies out there yesterday, parked on the street and going in and out, so I didn't see a flagman yesterday either.
Okay, we'll address that.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
It happens. Just glad it was me and not someone else.
Any further comments, questions? Thank you again. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Have a good evening. Good luck. Next presentation, we have the OCTA SR55 upgrade presentation.
Yeah, this is I was contacted by OCTA. They're doing an upgrade of the SR55, and I asked what that was, and they said this is something that will definitely have an impact on the Villa Park residents who use the SR55, both Catella and Lincoln exits and on-ramps. So they've kindly agreed to come down and give a very brief presentation, tell us what's going on and where they're at and what the residents can expect.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Kalina North, Public Outreach Manager for the State Route 55 Improvement Project. Here with me tonight is Jeannie Lee. She is the project manager and member of our technical team. So I'm here to provide you an overview of the project as well as some information about the upcoming public hearing that will be held in an open house format.
Sorry. Jumped the gun.
Next slide, please. So the project is on State Route 55 between Interstate 5 and State Route 91. On average, more than 275,000 vehicles travel on the project corridor on a daily basis, and we expect that number to increase by 9%, bringing the number up to about 281,000 vehicles by 2055. Based on the latest cost estimate, the total project cost is approximately $200 million. Currently, we are in the environmental phase, which is funded by OC Go funds, formerly known as Measure M, as well as federal funds. Now, this project is in the environmental phase, which is set to be completed by early next year. The project proposes to add a general purpose lane or regular lane in each direction, and as a result, would reduce congestion and improve mobility. Now, there are two alternatives being considered. One is a no-build alternative, which means the existing facility would remain the way it is today. The second is a build alternative, which would add one regular lane in each direction at the south end of the project between I-5 and SR22. Next slide, please. In addition, there will be ramp improvements made between State Route 22 and State Route 91, as the city manager had mentioned. The project will improve ramp capacity at various locations, including the 4th Street off-ramps and the southbound Catella Avenue on and off-ramps. Now, in both of these instances, these improvements would reduce vehicle queues and improve overall traffic operations. There will also be ramp improvements on the Lincoln Avenue off-ramp, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So improvements will also be made to the southbound Lincoln Avenue off-ramp. The project proposes to relocate the Lincoln Avenue off-ramp next to the existing southbound Lincoln Avenue on-ramp. This is intended to address the short weaving distance between the State Route 91 connector and the Lincoln off-ramp. This has resulted, which has created a situation where there's an increased traffic congestion as well as high accident rates. Next slide. So this diagram here simply shows the existing condition versus the proposed build alternative between 4th Street and 17th Street. For the additional general purpose lane, the project would shift the freeway center line 9 feet to avoid any right-of-way impacts to residences along northbound State Route 55 and keep construction on the southbound side only. This slide here provides you an overview of the environmental process. Since 2017, consultants prepared their technical studies reviewing the project's potential impacts. Next week, on Monday, September 30th, the draft environmental document, or DED, will be released for public circulation, during which time community members can review and comment on the document. The DED will be available at four libraries here in Orange County in the cities of Orange, Tustin, and Santa Ana. Now, we're also going to be hosting a public hearing in an open house format on Wednesday, October 16th. Once the final environmental document, or FED, is approved by Caltrans, the FED will be available to the public and will include responses to all comments as well as a selected preferred alternative. So when the DED becomes available, community members will have an opportunity to review and provide their comments from September 30th to October 30th. As I mentioned, OCTA and Caltrans will be hosting a public hearing on Wednesday, October 16th, and that'll be in an open house format at the Orange Public Library from 6 to 8 o'clock in the evening. Residents are welcome to stop by anytime to learn more about the project, ask questions to our technical experts, as well as submit their comments. In addition, we'll be having a couple of court reporters available as well to take comments. So if you are unavailable to attend the public hearing, comments will be accepted via email or by mail to the Caltrans District 12 office. The outreach team uses several strategies to inform stakeholders about the project as well as the upcoming public hearing in an open house format. We've begun our outreach process, which includes briefings and presentations, such as the one tonight, to community leaders, business owners, as well as school officials. In addition, we're going to be ramping up our social media presence and then distributing postcards and flyers to over 10,000 homes and businesses. So as a courtesy, we provided a postcard invitation to your staff here if you're interested in sharing that with your community as well. So we have a number of ways the community can stay informed about the project. We have a project website, social media. We're on Facebook. We are just going to be launching our Instagram page. If anybody has any questions regarding the project or the upcoming public hearing, you're more than welcome to email us or call us on our Project hotline. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be available to answer any questions the council may have.
Go ahead, sir.
The Catella, I think most residents in Villa Park routinely use the Catella on and off ramp to the 55 freeway. Are you aware that the city of Orange is pretty far along in approving two major developments to the east of Villa Park? One is what we refer to as the Selly Miller project, which is going to require the transport of about 1.1 million cubic yards of material down Villa Park Road. And another one that's under consideration by the city of Orange, it will take about, I think it's 400,000 cubic yards of material. So that's about 1.5 million cubic yards of material. And although the environmental documents don't identify specifically how it's going to be transported, that is the closest freeway on and off ramp. And of course that intersection or those on and off ramps are already pretty congested. Has that been addressed, or is that being addressed as part of your environmental documentation at this point?
At this point, I'd like to call Ms. Lee up. She's worked closely with the environmental team.
Good evening. My name is again Jeannie Lee, project manager on this project. We've been coordinating along the corridor, we have a 4 city of Tustin, Santa Ana, Orange, and Anaheim, and we've been, city staff was invited to our project development team meeting. However, the project that you've mentioned, I don't think that was mentioned. We coordinated other projects along the corridor, so we would like to get more information, and certainly we can take a look at that.
Yeah, I believe, City Manager, if you could correct, the City of Orange is looking at the Sully Miller approval tonight, aren't they?
The Trails at Santiago Creek
Trails.
project is a public hearing this evening.
Yeah.
The first of the public hearings, I don't, it's on the agenda. I don't know what happens, how they dispose of it. And the grading issue would not be a public hearing. It would be just a ministerial issue that would be handled at the staff level.
So, yeah, it's, there are a couple of projects that you might want to look into as part of the environmental documentation of your proposed project.
Okay, sounds good. And also just keep in mind that I know Kalina kind of went through the presentation quickly. Currently, right now, we don't have a fully secured funding for this project for design and construction just yet, even though CTA is working very hard to identify those funding. So right now, all the technical studies assume the opening year of 2035, just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next presentation, Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Good evening, Mayor Rosini, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff, and residents. I am Lieutenant Patrick Rich, and it's my pleasure to be here tonight to present the August 2019 crime stats for the city of Villa Park. In August of 2019, there were 4 Part 1 crimes reported in the city. All of those were thefts. The first one was reported on August 5th. That was in the 19,000 block of Ridgeview Road, where a generator was taken out of someone's open garage overnight. The second reported crime was on August 12th. That was on the 18,000 block of Montana Circle. 2 unlocked vehicles in someone's driveway were accessed, and credit cards and a wallet were taken out of those vehicles. On the 14th, on the 10,000 block of Frederick Drive, we received a report that a unlocked vehicle was in a driveway and a laptop was taken out of the trunk. And then on the 30th, on the 18,000 block of Hillcrest Avenue, landscaping tools were taken out of a trailer that was attached to a truck during the daytime when someone was working on a landscaping project in the area. I also would like to share that the Orange County Sheriff's Department either initiated or responded to 494 calls for service in the month of August. 128 of those were assigned or were calls that were called in by someone else and asked us to respond. 366 of those, so a great majority of those were either deputy-initiated calls or patrol checks that they took the time to log. There was 1 traffic accident reported. That was on August 27th. That was the hit and run of a mailbox, and that was at the 19,000 block of Mesa Drive. We did issue 55 moving violations and 6 parking citations. As you can see, Villa Park continues to be a very safe city and community to live in. We do ask that the citizens try to protect themselves a little bit. We get a little complacent because it is such a safe place to live. Lock your cars, lock your homes, lock your garages. Try to protect yourself a little bit. And as always, if you see something, say something. I would much rather have my deputies respond to a call where they weren't needed than not respond to something where they could have kept something from happening. And with fire season coming up, I hate to get ahead of this, but that's kind of where we're at. Please, if you have not done so already, take the time to make sure that you go on to the county's mass notification system, Alert OC, and sign up so that you receive an alert if something is going on if you live, work, or go to school in the city of Villa Park. That is all I have, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Orange County Fire Authority. And before our chief gets started, I wanted to do a brief proclamation here in recognition of Fire Prevention Week, and out of a tremendous amount of appreciation for what the Orange County Fire Authority does, the brave men and women, both uniformed as well as civilian, that work for the authority, and thank them for what they do. Rather than take up everybody's time and read all the whereases and wherefores and all the stats, I think we're well aware in Villa Park of the dangers of brush fires, and that time of year, we're here. So without further ado, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Good evening, everybody. My name is Phil Johnson from the Orange County Fire Authority. I'm the division chief here. Along with that, the fire proclamation for Fire Prevention Week, October 6th through the 12th. As you know, we've had some hot and dry weather lately. The good news is we've got a chance of rain coming throughout this week, so we're going to rest easy at least for the next few days. So with that being said, with Fire Prevention Week, we really want to have everybody pay attention to the things that could start fires in their houses and have a little prevention in there. Our number one cause of fires in the homes is cooking. Usually it's left unattended, a phone's ringing, a child's crying, somebody's at the door, things like that. It starts in the pan, gets into the cabinets, and then spreads throughout the house. Matter of fact, we've had some fire deaths through that. The other thing too is, along with those prevention, is alerting systems, your smoke detector. As we know, everybody should be changing the batteries in their smoke detector every time you change the clock. So that's twice a year, and I recommend testing them every month. And also have a home evacuation plan and practice that at least twice a year. Where are you going to go? You need to get out of the house fast. The way the furnishings and the constructions of our houses now, everything is synthetic. From a small wastebasket fire in a room to that room becoming an entire fireball is usually about 2 minutes. It's really fast. So you have to get out, and please don't go back in once you're out. We've had many fire deaths through that. They made it out alive the first time. The second time they weren't so lucky. So over the last 4 weeks with the city of Villa Park and the OCFA, we've had a total of 104 responses. I am proud to report the only fire that we've had was a call for a barbecue on fire. It did not spread to any structure, did not burn anybody, and there is something that goes along with making sure the grease and the old cooking elements are cleaned out from your barbecue. As we know, that fires are supposed to be in the barbecue, but sometimes they get a little bit out of control. Other than that, no major incidents within the city in the last 4 weeks' time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions?
Thank you.
Next presentation, probably, if not the best source of learning, maybe the second best, Villa Park Library, next to the schools, of course.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shauna Carlos, the library manager for the Villa Park Library. Just a few statistics from last month, and then I want to tell you about all the exciting things we have happening in October. It's a really busy month for us. So last month was a good month for circulating materials. We're now up 12% compared to the same time last year. Our program attendance is up by about 8%. So in October, we have 4 special programs going on. In addition to our regular book group and story times, we have Cody the therapy dog. He's coming to make his first visit on October 5th, and we already have 5 children signed up to read to him, and we've started a wait list. So he'll be visiting the library 3 times, and we anticipate his dance card will probably be filled every time. He's pretty cute. On October the 9th, teens are invited to come to a book swap from 3:30 to 4:30. You don't need to pre-register, just need to show up with a gently used book that they are interested in trading with another teen. On October 19th, we're offering a class for children. It's called Catch the Genealogy Bug. They'll be able to learn some basic concepts about genealogy, and they'll get to make their own family tree. We're offering appointments for Tech Mondays on October the 21st at 5 o'clock, and that's where we'll help people with downloading library materials to different devices. If they're struggling with that, they can get a one-on-one appointment with us. And we're excited about Halloween Fest on October 26th. We have some great NCL volunteers are going to come and help us hand out candy and some bookmarks. So that will be exciting. September is library card sign-up month. It's still, you still have a week, I guess about a week left to get your library card or to check and see if your account is still active. If it's been a while, we can update that for you. And remember, when you're thinking about what you can do with your library card, the county added a service this year called Freegal. So you can get unlimited free streaming music with your library card. And you can also get 3 downloads of songs a month. So it's a good way to save a little money and support the library. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions? Huge round of applause and thank you.
very
Those
much.
stats are going in the right direction. Thank you so much. Next, we have council member meeting attendance reports. And first up,
That's me.
mosquito and vector control.
So nothing, there was a meeting, but nothing new for the city of Villa Park. Still very much about make sure that there's no standing water, make sure you're using approved products to repel the mosquitoes. There have been cases of dengue fever across the nation. We don't have to worry about it right now, but they are saying that we're not out of the clear yet. This is a continuing problem that's going to be getting worse. And if you go to ocvector.org, right on the home page there, it talks about certain like 1 mile square radiuses in Stanton, Cypress, Anaheim, and Tustin. They're having to treat some of these Aedes mosquitoes. Those are the black and white ones that bite during the day, and they're very aggressive. They're going through with a truck-mounted defense. So if you see a truck driving that's spraying chemical, it's safe for humans, it's not safe for the mosquitoes, but this is a very serious concern in these areas. It is not in Villa Park, but if you have any family or friends in those areas, again, go to ocvector.org, and it's right there on the home screen.
And it is safe for animals as well.
Safe for animals as well. Yes.
Honorable
Oh, sorry, can I say one more thing? Almost forgot, sorry. It has nothing to do with mosquitoes, but it does, I just wanted to put this out because I know we have more of an audience now. Villa Park is doing the free flu vaccine clinic again this year, targeted for our Villa Park, geared towards Villa Park. Again, we want our elderly and our young residents to come. It'll be November 6th, Wednesday, here in this room from 3:30 till 6:30, 7 o'clock, depends when we run out, but it's first come, first serve. It's a service that we're really happy to offer to our residents and the nearby communities. So please, if you're ever going to consider getting a flu shot, please do so this year. It's really important to protect yourself, protect your loved ones. And again, that's no charge flu vaccine clinic. And if you have any questions, let us know. But Wednesday, November 6th, in here starting at 3:30.
Thank you.
Okay. A few days ago, I was on Morrow Circle, which is my old neighborhood on the other side of Villa Park Road, and a number of the residents there complained about an infestation of mosquitoes. And so I passed that information on to our past Mayor, Bill Nelson, who contacted the general manager of the Vector Control District, and they're actively working on that problem.
That's good.
So hopefully that will be put to rest. So, but if you do have a mosquito infestation in your neighborhood or your home, contact, first look for any standing water and empty it. But also, if you've got a problem, call the Vector Control District, and they'll send a representative out directly to work on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Orange County Sanitation District.
Okay, been a busy month. I chaired the Operations Committee on September 4th, and the agenda addressed mostly routine operations and maintenance issues. However, I also initiated a discussion of evaluation of working with the Orange County Water District to evaluate reclamation of other non-potable sources of water, including storm runoff and shallow and/or brackish groundwater aquifers, and perhaps utilizing that with the groundwater recycling system to take these non-potable sources and convert them to use for our to support our groundwater supply. On August 28th, I represented the city on the meeting of the Orange County Sanitation District Board of Directors. And at this meeting, the general manager provided his work plan for 2019-20, which is quite ambitious, looking at issues such as safety and security, succession planning, resource recovery, reliability, and operational optimization. And also on August 28th, the board approved MOUs with their 3 major bargaining units. On September 18th, I participated in the Ad Hoc Administration Building Oversight Committee. This proposed, we currently were in the process of developing a $170 million administration building on the north side of Ellis, across from the Orange County Sanitation District's current administration building. And at the meeting, at my request, the staff presented a new schedule. They worked with their contractors to shave an entire 6 months off the construction schedule, and completion is now projected to be completed by November 2021. And finally, we had a strategic planning workshop also on September 18th, and we discussed and approved an update to our strategic plan and adopted a number of, or a series of policy goals and policy statements that will guide the district for the next 2 years. And that concludes my report.
Thank you for your report. Next up is the Orange County Fire Authority, which will be meeting in 2 days, and their prior meeting fell before our last meeting. But I do have a committee report as the vice chairman of the Human Resources Committee. We met on September 17th at a special meeting of the Human Resources Committee. The committee received and filed the report of the organizational service level assessment of the Human Resources Department, basically how we're doing as an agency as it pertains to human resources. Much of the areas of improvement were in the rearview mirror, in a manner of speaking, and the Human Resources Department is going in the right direction. The leadership of the department has recently changed, and the Assistant Chief and Human Resources Director, Nina Collins, was hired, correct me if I'm wrong, out of Oakland Fire Department, I believe. If Chief Human Resources Director, she was hired out of Oakland Fire Department, if I recall? Yes. Okay. And she's a phenomenal lady, incredibly bright. We're very, very fortunate to have her with the Fire Authority now. The committee also discussed and voted unanimously to send the classification and compensation recommendations for the Service Center Occupational Series and the Contract Adjustment Third-Party Workers Compensation Administration to the Executive Committee of the Board for its approval of the recommended actions. If you have any questions about that, which you might, because that's a whole lot of language, feel free to get with me after the meeting and I can bring you up to speed on that. Look forward to the next meeting. And Chief, did you have anything you wanted to add with respect to how Garden Grove is progressing and City of Placentia? Thank you.
I'm proud to announce that the transition with the City of Garden Grove is now complete. All their firefighters in the stations are fully seated within the OCFA, right down to the uniforms. They're just getting themselves broken in on how we do business with our playbook, but they did go through an extensive training, which was over about 3 months, to bring them up to speed with us, and they have adapted very, very well. So we're very proud to have the City of Garden Grove with us. With the City of Placentia, they're still moving forward with the transition to change out into their own fire department at the end of the OCFA contract, which will be midnight on July 1st of 2020. We've just completed station walkthroughs of the 2 fire stations within Placentia with the City of Placentia to firm up what is staying, what is going, and any kind of needed repairs or upgrades that need to be done either to the premises inside or outside. And that's where we stand.
Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate it. Next, we have Orange County Library Advisory Board
There's no meeting.
and City Schools Advisory.
So we already had a pretty lengthy discussion from the city schools. The OUSD were here. So I did want to highlight three things real quickly and be brief on time. First was the July 25th strategic planning meeting they had. They released their strategic plan on July 26th. They were really inclusive of the community, and they're very receptive to ideas. They also are very good at communicating. If you go to the orangeusd.org website, you can find their information there. They're constantly putting out updates about what's going on in the school and in the district. So hit that up. They also have a facilities master planning meeting that's coming up. The last time they did this was 2003, 2004. They'll have some additional community input on that. That's something to look forward to. So just wanted to say thanks also. I know we did it while they were here, but they were great about it. They've been very transparent about all of the things that have been happening with our schools. It's not a fortunate situation, and it's something that they've been striving to address and then to try to keep us informed about. So I appreciate the fact that they came here, and they really are trying to do the best that they can, given some unusual circumstances.
Indeed. Thank you. Next, we have Community Development.
No meeting this month. However, the next meeting of the Community Development Committee is scheduled for October 14th. It's Monday at 4 o'clock here at in this room.
Thank you. Friends of the Villa Park Library.
So I'll just highlight two things. I know we're a small community. We don't have a lot of new residents, but it's, as Shauna mentioned, it's library card sign-up month this month, September. How many new people are we going to have in September? Well, hopefully everybody that comes to Villa Park and that is new to the area, first thing they should do is go get a library card. So that's my plug for them on that. The Friends of the Library is looking at their fundraiser early February of next year. They're looking at bringing in an author, either a local author or somebody famous, then to do some fundraising. So be looking out for that. And then the book swap, October 9th, was the other one I wanted to just highlight. I know Shauna just mentioned it, but that sounds like a great idea. I love the fact that our library here is small, but we're looking at those events that involve the community, and they reach out to try to bring groups together. So always a bonus.
Thank you. Infrastructure Management Advisory.
No meeting this month.
Investment Advisory.
No meeting.
Law Enforcement Advisory, no meeting. Community Services Foundation.
The foundation board met on August the 28th. I'm excited to say that we appointed Treasurer Francine Sawyer to become the vice chairman, which we're really excited about. We do have two board members here tonight. We have our chairman, Ed Carter, and also Tamison Reinheimer. The board also met and voted to present the new board member who will become our director of events. We're really excited about that. He's here tonight. His name is Forrest Case. Forrest, come up and tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Like he said, my name is Forrest Case. I've been a resident of Villa Park for 21 years. I'm 22 years old, so all my life. I graduated from Point Loma Nazarene University in May with 2 degrees, business finance and business management with a concentration on entrepreneurship. During my time, I served on the Campus Activities Board for 2 years, and then my junior year, I got to serve as kind of the head of that group. The Director of Activities and Design changed the name to Director of Activities and Marketing. During that time, the first 2 years, I kind of got to be the first-hand guy when it comes to events on campus. And then my junior year, like I said, as director, I oversaw 2 teams, 2 coordinators who had around 6, maybe 5 people on their team, as well as a marketing team. And I got to plan events of people from 50 in attendance to 1,500. So I'm no stranger to events. I'm excited to be here. My senior year, my senior year, I was the student body president. So I oversaw the organization of 80 as well as the events that I got to conduct in that. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm here to keep it brief. And again, thanks for having me.
Well, I'd like to recommend tonight that the City Council appoint you as a new member of the team. And thank you for your service and look forward to having you participate on the team together.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Out of request, on behalf of the Mayor Pro Tem and in the interest of time for Mr. Forrest Case, I'd like to move item 10 forward. Given his presentation, we're aware of his background. We appreciate his spirit of volunteerism. I'd like to have any discussion on that item.
This would be just a simple appointment by the council that would be approved by the council at large and pursuant to the bylaws of the foundation. So with, you need a motion, a second, and.
So moved.
Second.
Second, third,
Thank you very much.
Pick one.
So are you ready to vote? System, you
And
wanna vote?
a vote. Waiting for it to flash. There we go.
Just going to mash the button.
All five? So that all 5 pass, so congratulations.
Congratulations, Forrest.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Excited to get started.
That's it.
Okay. Bridges at Kramer.
Our meeting is tomorrow.
All right.
Okay.
And
And could I indulge the council for a personal announcement?
of course.
Okay. Renee, can I meet you at the podium? Renee and I would like to announce that we are formally engaged. Renee and I have known each other. I moved to Villa Park on Morrow Circle in 1981, and Renee and Wayne, her husband, moved there across the street in 1983. So during that time, we raised our kids together, and I was actually, her youngest son, Dave, was on, I think, 2 or 3 of my Little League teams that I managed. He was always my ringer. We referred to him as Big Dave because he had these big shoulders, didn't like to practice much, and really wasn't interested in baseball, but he could sure swat the ball. So he was my ringer. But anyway, Wayne passed a while back, and Renee and I got together. We actually got engaged formally last night. We now have it took us a while to get our ring manufactured, but it was finally done. So we have done that, and we'll be setting a date for sometime in 2019. So.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. That's a hard act to follow. I'm not even going to try. Public comments. All right. Any blue
We
cards?
received no cards. So.
Okay. All right. Moving on to public hearings. Next item is item 2, waiving the waive and reading in full of all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda. Steve.
I think you just said it for me. So it's the monthly adoption of the action, and we'd recommend approval.
Okay. I have a motion.
Motion. I move.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Passes by a 5-0 vote.
Next item, item 3, code amendments to sections 23-6.7. Steve?
This is an item that has previously been heard by the Community Development Committee. Basically, I'll let Ray introduce it for you, but it has to do with some zoning irregularities that are in the city, and this issue was raised by Councilman Colacott some time ago. After investigating, I believe we're trying to address some issues that are sort of disproportionate treatment in the zoning codes. So, Ray, do you want to go ahead and
Sure, thanks, Steve.
briefly summarize?
As noted, the focus of this code amendment is section 23-6.7, which are the development standards for the residential zones. And as you know, these development standards regulate the manner in which residential properties can be developed through the application of building setbacks, building height, parking lot coverage, and so on. What prompted this code amendment was the discovery of E4 zoned properties that are located on Murrow Circle, Councilman Colacot's old neighborhood, which were found to be substandard in size. Specifically, these properties are part of a residential subdivision that was recorded in early to mid 70s, consisting of 9 lots with sizes ranging between 7,700 square feet up to 12,000 square feet. So it's well below the minimum lot size for an E4 zone property, which is 20,000 square feet. What's peculiar about this tract is that the properties that are in the immediate area are all R1 zone, and this one isn't. I did some digging in, but I've yet to find any city records that provided any explanation why this subdivision was zoned E4 instead of R1, to be consistent with the other R1 properties in the area. But I will continue to research this. Hopefully I'll find something. The E4 development standards are intended, as I mentioned, for properties that are 17,000 square feet up to beyond that, a minimum 17,000 and beyond the 20,000 square feet. So needless to say, the E4 zoned or E4 development standards really does not apply to these properties on Murrow Circle. So the direct approach, and the one that city staff felt made the most sense to address the situation, is to maintain the current E4 zoning designation for these properties and to apply the appropriate R1 development standards based on lot size. So in practice, if an E4 zone property was 7,000 square feet, for instance, the appropriate development standards to apply would be those provided for R1 zone lots that are less than 8,000 square feet. And we already have that in our zone development standards, so we don't need to make any changes there. These development standards would be more proportional to the size of the lot, irrespective of the zoning designation. There were a couple of other minor cleanup items as part of this code amendment. One was to make clear that any new lots that are being created in the E4 zone has to be a minimum of 20,000 square feet. When we were doing previous amendments to this section of the zoning code, that must have inadvertently left off the amendment. So we're putting it back in and making it clear that, again, if there are any new E4 zone properties that are being created, it has to be a minimum of 20,000 square feet in size. The other changes or amendments that needed to be made are just cleanups to the range in the lot sizes for the E4 zone and the R1. It doesn't change anything really in terms of making it more restrictive for property owners to do anything in terms of improvements to their property. As Steve mentioned, this went before the CDC back in August. The committee members voted to bring this before a full city council for consideration. Public hearing notices were also mailed out in accordance with the municipal code. To date, staff has not received any comments for or against this item. And that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Council members, do you have any questions of staff?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are there any remaining, we've gone through a series of these hearings over the past, since 2014, cleaning up our zoning code. This particular street somehow went under the radar. Have we done have we evaluated the rest of the lots throughout the city? Are they all currently, once this is approved, appropriately zoned?
We're hoping. That's what I thought when we did the last amendment, and this was quite a surprise to us when we discovered that this pocket of residential lots were zoned E4 with the lot sizes that are within the subdivision. So the amendments were made to make the, the development standards more inclusive. Hopefully it closes the loop on everything. And I'm pretty confident that we did that work, that job.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir.
Well, one of my questions was, are there more, number one? And number two, we're talking about changing the code for those folks. And how, if there are more, we didn't notice those people. We just noticed, I assume, the 9 that are involved here on Moore Circle?
Yes.
We noticed the public hearing for the full city of a change. So we made a notice in the register was run. So we did not send mailings to all city residents, no.
But we assume everybody knows which kind of lot they have?
Well, that's, I think what we're trying to get to is if one comes up, we'll have to deal with it. But I think Ray he's done a pretty good review, we believe. This will catch up. He had his intern this summer go through parcel by parcel. We believe we caught everything. But that doesn't mean that, occasionally there isn't some. So we believe that we've caught all of them at this point.
I'm just concerned that we haven't notified others who may be in the same boat and we haven't found them yet, just like we hadn't found
Well,
these.
this is the changes, though. So this does not affect just those residents. It would affect all the residents in that category, if you will. So they would have the same development standards they would be applied to. So that would not, does not just identify the Morrow Circle residents. It identifies
No, it's
blanket.
it's for the entire
Yeah.
community.
Yes,
So
sir.
I just wanted to make sure that we captured everyone. Is there any way to determine if we have other lots like this?
Well, like I said, we had the intern go this summer and look through all the list. And we
Yeah.
believe we caught them all, barring an error by the intern looking at all the parcels. So quite candidly, we believe we've got them all, but that's the best assurance I can give you, is that we've done the review that we should be doing in due diligence, and we've come up where we believe we've accomplished the mission.
And this ordinance would cover not only those that have been recognized, but potentially those that have not been
Yes, sir.
recognized. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Why this is important is that for any of the lots that we've dealt with over the past several years that are less than 20,000 square feet in our zoned E4, those folks had to deal with the same setback requirements that a regular 20,000 or larger square foot resident had. So that meant that the setbacks for the front yard, the backyard, and side yards were much more substantial than you have for an R1, which severely limits what people could do with their property. In Villa Park, we've always supported our residents improving their properties, and I think that's something we want to do going forward. And what this does is it reduces some of those governmental barriers to improving their property consistent with standard zoning practice. So it's a good thing for our homeowners.
Thank you. Any members of the public like to comment on this matter? Okay. Any further discussion amongst council? Do I have a motion on this?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
That passes by a 5-0 vote, so the second reading will be our regular meeting in October. I believe it's October 22nd.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Item 4, second reading of the ordinance number 29616, or I should say 2019-616, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Villa Park Committee in Section 19-4.1 of Chapter 19 of the Villa Park Municipal Code designating speed limits. Steve.
This is the second reading, as we heard last month. The first reading at that time was forwarded for the second reading. It basically sets the speed limits in the city of Villa Park relative to a speed study that was done consistent with the state law. The only change that was identified at that time based on the speed study was the increase of Lemon Street from 30 to 35 miles an hour. And this is the second reading, and the council has the option or ability to do anything they would like to do at this time with the second reading. However, we would subsequently have to go back if you amended it and go back and have another second reading in the next month.
And just for the record, could we have it read aloud? Lemon between what and what?
It would be between Lemon and, I'm sorry, the entirety of Lemon, if I'm not mistaken, Akram.
The section that will have the speed limit increase is Lemon from Villa Park all the way to Robin, to Mesa. And that's the portion which will increase. The portion from Mesa to Valley, where there are homes, residential homes, and fronting onto that street, will remain as 30 miles per hour.
Thank you. Council members, do you have any questions of staff on this? Any members of the public like to be heard on this? Any discussion?
Well, I'd like to rethink how we're going about this, just a suggestion. I would certainly love to see some speed bumps put in if we're going to raise the speed limit to curtail the speeds that we're seeing. I mean, if you take into consideration the speed itself was clocked at the midpoint of each one of the segments, and they're doing 38, I think it was average of 38 miles an hour.
39 approximately.
Chances are they're running, as I said last time, 40 or better. I've gotten some pushback from several residents. I've seen pictures of lemonade stands on the sides of the streets and things of that nature from folks, and I'm just really concerned about raising the speed limit at this point in time. I realize we have to do it, so, I mean, you have to comply with state law and so forth in order to be able to have the tickets, if they're given citations, hold up in court. But I'm really concerned about the safety of our residents in the city, and I'm not in favor of raising the speed limit, number one. But number two, if we have to, then I'd like to see some kind of speed impediment or something put in place on Lemon in strategic locations to help slow the traffic.
I would be happy to do whatever the council wants to do. My only thought is if you're going to put speed bumps on one street, you're going to just have people, you're pushing traffic onto other streets. So if you were going to suggest speed bumps, which are a very viable, I guess it's pavement calming type of thing, that's something we should do probably at a big picture of Villa Park and not just address one street because of the speed limit change. I'd also like to because in advance you and I've had some discussions, I asked both the sheriff and fire to be prepared to answer any questions about any impact it might have on them relative to response times or whatever. So I'm assuming they're both did their homework and prepared, and I won't speak for them, so I'll let them.
May I comment first before that? So I agree with you. I don't like the idea. I don't think anybody likes the idea of having to increase the speed limit. However, I also don't want to thwart our, fine sheriffs to be able to do their job. If we don't raise the speed limit based on the speed survey, then it kind of ties their hands, and that's not what our goal is. So as much as I agree, I don't like the idea of raising the speed limit. I do like the idea of some sort of speed dampening or speed, deterrent. And although our agenda item is just about the speed limit, I'd like to also propose, and I'd like to hear from the chief as well, but there might be other alternatives than big speed bumps, and that perhaps there's, I know that there's some that are these rubber ones that are not permanent. You can move them, but there are these rubber speed humps that might be more cost effective. And I agree that if you just do speed hump, speed bump, any kind of speed deterrent along just Lemon, all that's going to do is make people not go down Lemon, and they're just going to do the same thing around the others. So I'd like to ask or request that staff maybe somehow, we vote on the speed limit based on what it is on the agenda, with the direction to staff requesting that they look at, what it would cost down Lemon, down Center, down Taft, down Santiago, something like that, knowing that we do need to do something to keep people from achieving that 35. Because in 5 more years, the next speed survey, we could have people blowing down there at 40, and then now we've got to raise it to 40, and it's ridiculous. So I would like to hear from the chief as well, because I don't want to put something that's going to make your fire trucks bottom out either.
Well, correct me
Hang
one.
Hang on.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's have every council member have a turn, and then we'll go back to you, and then we'll go to the chief. Councilman Colacott.
We dealt this very same issue on Feather Hill Street. When I moved from Morrow Circle, I moved to Feather Hill, but we dealt with this a number of years ago. When I first moved to Feather Hill, just the configuration of the street, it's about a quarter of a mile long. You go around a little island, then you've got this nice straightaway, and the temptation to hit it is pretty great, and we had people flying up and down that street. It's a residential cul-de-sac. And we had a number of near misses. Thank goodness they were near misses and not fatalities. So we spent a considerable amount of time working with our then city council, and we had 2 speed, not bumps, but speed humps installed on Feather Hill. And they've been effective in, we also went through the same with the review through with the sheriff and the fire department. And they've been installed. They've worked effectively for at least a decade. And I know we have a lot of paramedic and fire truck traffic up and down our street with a number of our elderly and disabled residents, and they seem to be able to maneuver them pretty well, thank you. I'm also familiar with the reach of Lemon Street. That's a question, which is, I guess, from Mesa down to Alice / Serrano. And I know that that has been a real problem. We've had people blowing through the stop signs, and we tried putting a flashing stop sign, which from the adjacent residents, they've reported that's been pretty effective in keeping people from blowing through the stop sign, but we still have the speeding. And I would support putting in the speed humps, not bumps, but speed humps from the hill down towards Alice, maybe a couple of them. And once we install them, then limit this ordinance to just the reach between, this increase the speed limit just between Alice, Serrano, and Villa Park Road, but do a follow-up survey speed survey after the speed humps are installed, and see how that affects our speed. Maybe we can then justify with the state criteria a lower speed limit than is currently being proposed based on our current measurements.
I think we need to keep this discussion to the agenda item at hand. I think when we go too far afield, we're going to run into issues that are not agendized, though I appreciate the suggestion. I'll comment on it later, give you my own expertise on that, let everybody have a say on it. But I think if we get, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we get too far off on this one, we could run into an issue, and there are very strong feelings, I would purport to say, that are directly opposite of members of the community about speed humps. This is not a new issue. This has been discussed a number of times before the Law Enforcement Advisory Committee, other committees, other councils, and candidly, I think we need to hold off on that. Councilman Zimmerman, do you have any comments?
If you had more, go ahead and I'll.
No, I'm going to defer to you, and then I'll wrap up.
Okay. So I think I was stretching the bounds of my knowledge and also looking for alternatives last month to see if there was any way to get around what we could do not to put these signs in. I don't think any of us want to see the speed limits go up anywhere in Villa Park. And it just seems like maybe some awareness about how the speed surveys work throughout our community, knowing that we can keep speeds down if we keep speeds down. That seems intuitive, but maybe we didn't know that that's what the thing needed to happen. We need to. So I looked into a little bit about what else we could do in terms of maybe enhanced enforcement, something that we might, if we placed a car, maybe one of the public service, the cars we have, to slow cars down. There's some other alternatives for how we might continue to keep speeds low. I know that just keeping the speed limit low does tend to help people go slower. If we can't do that, there are other signage out there, the enforced by radar signs that tend to catch people's attention more and make them know that we're actually going to enforce whatever new speed limits out there very strictly, I think is one of the other methods. I've had some pushback, as I think the mayor is referring to, in terms of the noise of speed bumps or humps and what the impact to the community can be. There are sections of that road that are very wide and sections that are very narrow, and it would be great if we could pick and choose exactly where that speed survey applied to, but we can't. I think the real matter is awareness, and we need to see if we can do some more to promote the slower speed in our neighborhoods. That's it.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for their comments. I'd like to thank the tremendous amount of time that staff has put into this. And I understand the very passionate feelings of some members of our community that have had the opportunity or even are aware that this is out there, but there are many others that frankly are not, don't know that there is a discussion about speed humps going on this evening, and that's why, out of an abundance of caution and in fairness to them, it should be a totally separate item. But with respect to the agenda item at hand, none of us want the speed limit to go up. But the reality is, when you are enforcing the law, and that's somewhat of my expertise, I would venture to say, you have to operate by the basic speed law. And Akram, you can touch on this. You have to have a speed survey. And what that speed survey says is what you set the speed limit at, whether we like it or not. And a little historical background, that street has been 35 before. But then we had a speed survey, and unless I'm mistaken, unless it was a unilateral decision by the prior council, it was reduced to 30. Now that speed survey is saying it's going back up to 35. This is an education, this is an enforcement, this is an engineering issue. That's how you combat moving violations, that's how you combat traffic collisions, that's how you combat motor vehicle deaths. It's the 3 E's: education, enforcement, engineering. So we're kind of talking about a manner of trying to re-engineer the road, talking about dealing with some enforcement issues here. We need to bring it all together and trust and rely upon our experts. And I think our experts, candidly, are not this council, with all due respect to their wisdom. It's our engineer and it's our lieutenant in charge of police services. We do have a committee that deals with this, with law enforcement related matters. They can certainly come up with suggestions perhaps in the future. We have infrastructure management committee that might be able to come up with suggestions in the future, but the issue at hand here is whether to adopt a study. And without adopting this study, and it's not a bits and piece, you have to adopt it all, unless I'm mistaken. You have to adopt it all. Otherwise, you can't enforce the law. And if we can't enforce the law, one of those 3 E's disappears. And then how safe are we? If we can't enforce the law, if we can't issue citations for speeding, how are we supposed to combat it? How are we supposed to allow his deputies, the brave men and women of the Sheriff's Department, to do their job? And with that, I'd like to defer to Akram and our Lieutenant in charge of Police Services if they have any comments, and of course, Chief Johnson on this.
Can I just get a real quick clarification?
Of course.
If we don't enact this, the survey and then the new speed limit change, what happens? That's just to clarify for the cities.
Okay. As I mentioned the last meeting, is that speed survey is supposed to be done around every 5 years. There are some circumstances that it could be increased up to 7 years and so on. However, now if a speed survey is done, then we got to follow the results of that speed survey. And the speed limit is set within 5 miles from the 85 percentile. Okay. Now, our old survey is expiring, and that's why the reason this is being redone, the speed survey. So if this is not new speed limits are established, then technically the existing ones' speed limits are expired.
As of what date?
Expired, it's really this year, in 2019. So that's
we
why
would
we're
have,
recommending.
in other words, we would have no enforceable speed limits.
Yes.
As of the end of 2019?
At the end of the 5-year cycle, basically.
Correct.
Sorry, can I ask another question?
Yes.
How much does a speed survey cost?
It's not that much. It's about, I think, $5,000.
And how long does it take to do?
It's what they do is that they go at every street or every section that we give them, and they do collect the survey and the speed of 100 cars traveling at both directions together. And that's so they jump from one section to another.
So like a week or a month?
It takes about a couple of months
Okay.
to do the whole thing. Because in addition to that, they review the engineering of the street, if there's any curves, if there's any steepness grade, and also the accident records of that street. So in other words, if there is any accidents that are caused by speeding, then we take that in consideration.
So we could, in answer to, we could also perform another survey within this 5-year cycle. But at the end of the current 5-year cycle, we're done.
Okay.
You know, you can't ignore, at that point, you've done the cycle and you keep getting it. But we're going to run a time period, and that's what he's told you is basically, we're close to the end of the cycle here. So action's going to be required on the part of the council.
Councilmember
Actually,
Collins.
that partially addresses my question, is that if we, subsequent to adopting this ordinance and approving the increase, we could implement some sort of some traffic calming strategies, and then come back during this 5-year period and redo the traffic study. And if we have a lower speed limit or speed that we measure, we could go back and amend the ordinance
Yes.
accordingly.
Anytime when the conditions of the street changes, such as widening or putting sidewalks and so on and all that, that's a change of the condition of the street. Then you're required to do another speed survey to determine if the speed limit need to be changed or remain as is.
So conversely, I would suggest that it is a roll of the dice, because if you come back with a survey and it says it's higher, then you're locked into the new survey.
Yeah.
So there's always sort of like, if you want to roll the dice, yes, or if you know.
Well, do we have time to actually assess speed impediments before this expires? So that we don't, in other words, what if we just took this tonight for the second reading and postponed it or put it off for 30 days or 60 days to give us the opportunity to look at speed impediments and modify this? What's so funny?
Oh, he just
Well,
did spike strips.
He said spike strips.
Oh, yeah, well, I think we ought to make a toll road. That'll
So
If I may,
my-
part of the process,
okay.
and fire had to run because they're fighting the fire and it was second alarm, so the chief had to leave. And there is a part of the fire code that says that any speed devices that we put in there, any traffic calming devices, do have to be approved by the fire department. And that does extend the time that we have to look at any of those devices and any potential remedies that we're looking at. So we want to make sure if we do make a decision that we,
Understood.
keep in mind, if they do have up to 60 days, the fire department does to respond to any recommendations or anything that the council or the staff would like to do related to that.
We got somebody on
So,
the board
so
that
there
can
is
help us.
there is nothing precluding you from coming back and doing another speed survey within the next 5-year cycle. So
Right.
if you were to approve something, and then come back with a traffic calming and saying, we want to direct staff to do a study again next year, and, and after, give it some time, because you're basically going to go through, how a very abbreviated time if you were to come back now. But you could come back and you could implement a measure, come back and get a longer sampling of it if you would, a year sample or whatever, and have the opportunity. You don't have to wait for another 5 years to do the cycle. So if you were implementing traffic calming mechanisms now, you could come back and say, well, let's see what happens. But again, I think the mayor is at a point, you could give us direction tonight to implement a study or something along, but we do not have a specific, well, what can we do tonight? I
Well,
guess?
right, the discussion of potential traffic calming is related to speed limits, so you can discuss it, but you can't take any action. You can definitely direct that to be put on a future agenda for consideration.
And you could direct a study be done with that information, come back for that as well, so you could.
Sure.
Like Councilwoman Miles had suggested, looking at a number of other streets, right? You could do that, give that kind of direction.
A couple other things I want people to understand is, and I say this with all deference and respect to the Sheriff's Department, until Lieutenant Rich's predecessor really put an emphasis on traffic enforcement, our ticket numbers were abysmal. Now Captain Puckett then our former Lieutenant in charge of Police Services, Jeff Puckett, really laid the groundwork to get some of the new deputies radar trained, traffic enforcement trained. We didn't have the kind of enforcement that, frankly, as much as those of us that have unfortunately had the red and blue lights behind us don't want, but frankly we do need, especially those of us that have little kids that like to run out in the streets, despite our best efforts. So I think that there's a bit of a time frame, a bit of an education period that was lacking, that wasn't there. And despite the best efforts of Neighborhood Watch and the Law Enforcement Advisory Committee and the excellent work of the Sheriff's Department, they didn't have their deputies fully up to speed. That's not the case now. We have new deputies, we have more energetic deputies, and we have better trained deputies that are out there. And the monthly stats are saying that. And we're not looking for specific numbers or quotas or anything. You know, frankly, I don't care. I don't care if they're writing 100 or writing 25, but as long as they're making contact with people, slowing people down, educating them. Sometimes a traffic citation is warranted. Sometimes a talking to, a warning is warranted. But we didn't even have that, I would venture to say, 3 or 4 years ago. We are getting that now. So I think now that we're getting that, I have a feeling that speed is probably going to go down in the future. The street itself isn't getting any wider. Yes, our cars are getting perhaps faster. Some of our drivers may be more impatient. But I would venture to say that with more enforcement and some of the traffic calming measures, the fear of that 35 is going to be the new 50, I think is a bit of a stretch. So I think that in the future we might have a 30 mile per hour speed. Now that's just speculation, but also I think it's important to have a historical understanding of what enforcement has been like in this community, and it's been lacking. And that's not a knock on our sheriff, our lieutenant in charge of police services, or his deputies. That's just a fact, and that's a factor of training. What I would argue is that if we don't enact this ordinance, if we don't adopt this, we set ourselves up for a much bigger problem in the future. And I think that the visibility of the Sheriff's Department is going to make a big difference, and perhaps some traffic calming measures might be in order. But I don't want to get going down that road too far.
There is in 2011, I believe Councilman Colacott had mentioned, the council did deliberate on this and adopted a speed hump policy, and I think I've shared it with some of you. The council made the policy, the council can change the policy, but right now that is existing policy, so we'd have to do some action. So if the council would like it to come back on a thing, I would suggest that you direct us to bring it back next council meeting or whatever, and say we'd like to come back and we want to revisit, we want to change it or whatever. So then at that time, it would be a notice and people would have the opportunity to come and participate, because they do understand there was a lot of participation at the time.
And the area in question where speed bumps perhaps might be of real significant use, and the area that has been discussed would not comply with either the grade, about 4 or 5 different aspects of that policy of which I've reviewed quite extensively. And whether it's a speed bump or a speed hump, same rules apply. And if you have any doubt, please check with our city engineer. Unfortunately, that area just would not comply with that. It is, however, probably more appropriate for a residential street, certainly a small street, but that Lemon is not a small street. Lemon is one of our, given our traffic volume, more of our arteries. It's like Taft, it's like Center, it's like Valley. So keep that in mind.
So I would like to move that we go ahead and we vote on the amendment, but then request that that policy be brought back next month so that we can review.
And we could afford the opportunity, if you wanted to be specific and allow you in that agenda item, should you be interested in pursuing that, we would have the option of saying, let's make some decisions definitively about specific locations or something, if you would want to.
So what are we voting on?
Well, we're voting on the agenda item, but the motion is that we do bring back that policy that was written in 2011 for us to be able to discuss, amend, and add to.
I would also just ask that we allow, and I would like to bring it back as soon as I can, but I always like the Law Enforcement Advisory, the LEAC, to have a chance to look at it because I think they did last time. Or I think there was some discussion with them. I just think that that's the mechanism you have. But we can bring it back in a very expedited approach, I think is what I'm getting the message.
Well, and I don't know if this is a
I'll
selfish.
second the motion.
Thank you. Motive, but I don't know how fitting in the other streets fits in that, because I know that although Lemon is people are speeding Lemon, people are also speeding on Center, and they're also speeding on Santiago. So I don't know how to apply that into.
Well, the speed hump policy is unilateral for the city.
Okay.
So it's applied throughout the city. So if you read through that, it has the criteria that what is eligible and what's not. So with that being said, if you were to revise that, you would then say, okay, this is ineligible.
Okay.
And there is a specific process in there as well to get them approved. For instance, I believe it requires
75%.
75% of the homes in the adjacent area have to be, those are specific elements that were at the time that, again, can be changed by this council, but that has to be a deliberate action of the council and agendized as such.
In terms of this policy enacting what we have on the table right now, is there any urgency to doing, I realize this is the second reading, we've had some lively discussion, getting this done tonight, are we doing this, I know we said the end of the year, are we doing this maybe without additional public comment or additional time for the people to come in because we need to do anything sooner, or is it just that we've already done all the analysis we can do and this is what we've come up with?
I think we're just moving forward on it in the manner that's trying to get us to our deadline, knowing that we hit a time frame. You obviously can delay it a month or two, but you're going to hit a time frame. This has been publicly noticed, and there was a public hearing, and it has, a public notice issued, and in the register again as well. So it can be done more. You can continue it for another month if you wanted to, but we're going to hit a point where we have to do it.
And the Councilman Miles' motion proposes looking at other traffic calming measures anyway, so we can go ahead and approve this and continue to look at other ways to calm traffic in that area and elsewhere.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure the timing in terms of.
You do have time, but you're going to come to it's.
Got it.
How far do you want to?
Any further discussion? I have a motion and I have a second. All right, let's go ahead and vote.
So just for the record, I'll make sure we're clear on the record. Could you state the motion again?
The motion is that we vote on the agenda item and then that we bring back the policy written in 2011 to the council to be able to make updates and amend and ask staff to direct staff to look at other streets.
And so to clarify, the motion was to approve.
To approve.
To not just vote on it, to
To
approve
approve.
the act. Okay. Okay, so that passes on a 3-2 vote with Councilman Zimmerman and Mayor Pro Tem Pitts voting no. So it passes on a 3-2 vote.
Thank you. Next up, we have the remainder of the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered routine and are enacted by one motion approving the recommended action listed on the agenda. Any member of the city council, staff, or the public may request an item to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion or separate action unless otherwise specified in the request to remove an item from the consent calendar. All items will be removed, all items removed shall be considered immediately following action on the remaining items on the consent calendar. Anybody want to pull anything?
If I could, I'd like to pull 11.
Okay. Anything else?
You could have a
Member of the
motion.
public want to pull anything? Staff? Okay. If not, do I have a motion on the remainder?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That passes by a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to item 11, travel authorization requests. Steve, report, please.
Item number 11 is a follow-up to an action. It's a following of a procedure that was established by the council earlier this year, which basically said travel outside of the immediate Southern California area would come back to the council in advance of the travel. Councilman Colacott has submitted a request to attend the California Stormwater Quality Association October 7th through October 9th in Monterey. And It's to, I'll let him speak for the reasons, but basically, he founded this committee 30 years ago, or 30 years ago, I guess.
30 years ago.
30 years ago, and I believe this is the meeting in Monterey.
Yeah. Okay. In 1989, as the city manager mentioned, I founded what became the California Stormwater Quality Association, or CASQA, an association of cities, counties, state and federal regulators, and private organizations. And the overall objective of CASQA is to collaborate in developing and implementing the stormwater compliance program throughout California. It's been cited as a model for other statewide programs and by US EPA headquarters, and CASQA has grown into one of the largest organizations of its kind in the nation. Villa Park is regulated, like all other cities in California and the nation, under a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES discharge permit, that regulates stormwater discharges in our city, as well as requiring us to oversee construction and grading activities and other potential discharges into our storm drain system. So the purpose of attending this conference is to gain more information. This is an informational type of a conference where you learn what's going on with the stormwater program, what's coming down the pike in terms of permit requirements and permit negotiations throughout the state. It gives you a picture of where this program's headed and how to best position the city. I am involved with a number of other organizations that deal with planning issues and engineering issues, and similarly I attend those, gain information, and have applied those to the city and to the benefit of the city. Last Monday, I was invited by the Local Government Commission to host the first of 3 workshops at the Orange County Water District headquarters on practical strategies and accessible tools to implement innovative solutions to our water challenges. Key evidence, or the key audience included mayors, council members, and county supervisors and city managers from Orange County. But I was invited to host that conference, and my presentation at the conference was to address the critical role of cities and counties in water management, including stormwater management. We have a very significant stormwater management facility just to the on the east side of our city called referred to as Villa Park Lake. It's basically the Bond Street pits. I've also participated as a member of the ACC Orange County Energy and Environment Committee and the corresponding statewide League of Cities Environmental Committee, again as a representative for our city looking out after the city's interests. Attendance at this workshop will provide valuable information to support Villa Park's interest in managing water resources and ensuring that we have appropriate regulation under our stormwater permit that's issued by this. Our specific permit is issued by the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board. So I'd like to request that I apologize first of all for a very cursory application for approval. The information I got was late in coming, and I actually was out of the office when I submitted it. But thank you for the opportunity to present on this, and I'd request your approval of the conference attendance.
Councilman Zimmerman, you pulled the item. Do you want to comment on it first?
Well, I really pulled it just in the interest of full disclosure. We enacted this policy recently, and this was kind of our first time going through it, and I just wanted to kind of highlight that, that Councilman Colacott was following the process, and we had this thing that was up. Also, it was interesting to see it's something that does impact our city, and that we have a distinguished member of the committee that's going, and I wanted to at least indicate that I really appreciate you doing that for our community. We're honored to have you do that for us.
Thank you. Well, also, one thing I forgot to mention is that as a member of the Orange County Sanitation District Board, we've already implemented a number of stormwater diversions to the sanitary sewer. So the water that is received by the sanitation district ultimately makes its way to the groundwater recycling system and is conserved for augmenting our water supply. So you know, I'm sure that will be one of the items that will be discussed because it's kind of a showcase item in California.
Got it. Curious what the cost to the city on this, can we just,
I believe it's like $500 or $600.
Great.
For the attendance, yeah.
within your budget, obviously? That's
Yeah, it's well within my budget.
Any other council members want to be heard on this?
I'll say something. The California Stormwater Quality Association, Councilman Colacott, is very fortunate to have you as someone who's well-versed in that area, and I definitely think you should go. However, I don't think you should go on Villa Park's dime, and this is why. I don't see how there's any city business that's going to be conducted there. And we do have a group of independent elected officials at Serrano that is very well versed and able and capable of managing our water requirements, needs, et cetera. So I definitely think that you know, your presence there would definitely be beneficial, and you are definitely a good person for them to have host these events. However, I do not agree that this should be something that the city pays for.
Just a point of clarification, this deals with stormwater, and I don't think Serrano, that's necessarily their bailiwick.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
I appreciate your comments, but I'd like to offer my wholehearted support. I think Villa Park is extremely fortunate to have somebody who literally founded, correct me if I'm wrong?
I founded it. Yeah.
Founded this association, is recognized as an expert in this field, has identified deficiencies and issues within our own community that, despite the expertise of our incredible engineering staff and employees, has even found issues where we were deficient. And without that expertise, we potentially could wind ourselves up in potential civil liability. And I think that it is a very valuable use of city funds, and I would like to endorse the expenditure, and I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
May I ask one question, though? And there's no way it's going to come off in sounding good when I ask, but since you are the founding member, and it's obvious we all agree that your expertise is, you're definitely qualified, then, and forgive me for how this sounds, but how come the association isn't hosting your presence there? How come they're expecting you to pay?
We've never discussed that, and I've not been actively participating on the board of the of CASCO. I'm pretty much retired now.
As a question, has anything that has transpired on this group since you founded it actually been enacted upon this council, or since you've been city manager?
Well, every year we have a permit that is issued by the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board. It's a federal discharge permit.
Mm-hmm.
And the CASCWA takes the lead in statewide in helping guide the direction of this the administration of this program by the State Water Resources Control Board, US EPA, and the Regional Water Quality Control Boards. So yes, it has a direct influence on our city.
Have we not had at least one development in particular that may have potentially run afoul or have had some questions raised about this without getting into specifics?
We have not had any specific interactions with this body. However, if they've impacted in the NPDES process, that would be something they would know and we wouldn't. They've had no specific interaction with us. We do have interactions with the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Board. That's a legally required relationship that we have. The relationship between this board and the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Board is not something that we're engaged with. So I wouldn't be privy, if you will, to knowing the relationship or the impact they would have on that. And that's a fair statement. They probably have a very strong impact. I just don't. We're not. It isn't something that we directly relate. We don't interact.
So we're
with.
not members of this. Villa Park is not a member of this association, or are we?
Not directly. my old shop at the County of Orange does participate in, is very active in CASQA on behalf of the cities in the county.
Well, I think we're lucky that we have your expertise and your knowledge that you can apply here in case there is an event of a storm drain, storm water, some catastrophe, God forbid, or crises. However, I still don't see how that's gonna, you going to this is gonna change. You would still provide that information here even if you weren't going, so. But you're definitely qualified, and I'm sure that they're very happy that they have you.
I'd like to make the motion.
Sorry, before you do, real quick, is there something that if you went to this conference as a sponsor, sponsored by the city, that is there some direct report or something that you could bring back to the city that would provide justification or value that showed why this trip should be paid for by the city?
I'd be pleased to provide a trip report, describing information gathered and contacts made.
I understand that sometimes, in as much as we have dealings that are outside of the city that may impact decisions, that it seems like sometimes just a broader knowledge of what's going on in our government at large may impact our decisions. Something like this, it might not be, it may be kind of ubiquitous. There may be some knowledge that kind of seeps in or comes through that then informs the decision down the road, that just having that additional knowledge may be beneficial. I think if this were something that was happening all the time, and I would be more hesitant, but I think a special occasion or something that gains you an additional, and the city of Villa Park gains additional exposure, I think that the merits of that, especially given the small dollar amount, kind of outweigh each other, so.
I agree. I think that the small dollar amount and the potential benefit is significant. Again, there's the permit that Councilman Colacott mentioned, and knowledge of stormwater runoff. This is a rather unique thing that even despite Akram's incredible amount of wisdom and expertise, it's not his area of expertise. And having Councilman Colacott, who is chairman of the Infrastructure Management Committee, or excuse me, not chairman, but the council member liaison, I beg your pardon, to that committee. Certainly, I think that in that capacity, as well as a city council member and just his overall understanding, I think that it will benefit the city. So appreciate the concern for the treasury, but and the taxpayers' funds, but I respectfully disagree, and I
So I interrupted your motion. I apologize.
It's okay. I'm waiting for a second, so.
I'll second.
And do we have any comments from the public on this? I don't know if I offered that. If I didn't, I apologize. I'd certainly like to hear what you all have to say if you have any concerns about it or any comments. Okay. Hearing none, seeing none, bringing it back for discussion and a potential motion.
I think you moved and I
And
seconded.
the second, I'm sorry, I should say the second. Been a long day. So motion and a second. I'd like to vote on it, please. Thank you.
That passes by a 3-2 vote with Mayor Pro Tem Pitts and Councilwoman Miles voting no.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, we'll have new business. It's the Second Amendment to the agreement with Rutan and Tucker for provision of city attorney services. Steve.
Thank you, Mayor. This item reflects our contract for our city attorney services that are provided currently by Rutan and Tucker in the face of the person next to me. Basically, the contract expires in October 28th of 2019, so prior to our meeting next month. In 2017, the City Council basically approved a First Amendment to the agreement, which had been in the past was sort of an evergreen, if you will, but they changed it to a term certain, and at that time they recommended, they approved a date specific for it. And they talked about an RFP. However, that was, while I was here at the time, I was just basically getting started in 2017. I've had a chance to talk to a number of other city managers and a number of other city attorneys as well, quite candidly. Then Todd and I talked about this. It's my perception and my recommendation that we are getting quality services at a very low rate in the attorney world based on what other cities are getting. We are also getting Rutan and Tucker which is as evidenced by the presence we had earlier in closed session. That would cover that as well. So this, I said to Todd, listen, I want to come back. I want to have a 4-year agreement. Basically, I don't want much of an increase, basically, and I'm not going to, I'm going to negotiate whatever. So he came back and said it was from $4,000 a month to $4,200 a month, which is an annual increase of $2,400, again, in the attorney world, which is not very big, and an increase in the hourly rate for specialized legal services, which would be like contract negotiations where we had today, for instance, that would go from $200 to $225 per hour. If you've contracted with an attorney, if you talk to any city, it's almost laughable that rate is what we're paying. And in the extension agreement would put a 4-year agreement. So it's my recommendation that we spare the expense of an RFP because I don't know that we would get anything near the quality that we're getting at near the cost we're getting. And it's my responsibility, I believe, to present the best recommendation I can. So, and I think that's where I'm coming from at this point. So I would recommend that the council approve the second amendment to the agreement, which would have those 3 provisions.
Thank you. Council members, do you have any questions of staff on this?
Quick,
Go ahead.
you talked him up so much, it seems like maybe he's looking for more money now. Maybe you should ask for more. The look.
I can give you no legal advice on that.
But we do feed you.
Pros and cons.
Just a quick question. What is the impact based on the hourly rate going up as well? We know $2,400 on the retainer, but is there an impact? Is there an impact on the uptake on the 200 or 225?
The specialized legal services?
Yeah.
That will be dependent, say, for instance, on decisions the council may make with respect to closed session decisions and potential litigation or special action that will be brought forward. It's very minimal at this point because we have very little action going on at this point. Again, I think that's sort of something we would knock on wood and congratulate ourselves for the foresight of the council and the wise advice of our city attorney to keep us out of litigation. But that is sort of external to us, so we don't really have much of an impact. I would say very, very minimal, at most a couple $1,000s on something that would come up, say, for instance, a contract negotiation, as we talked in closed session today.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Members of the public, any questions, comments, concerns? Thank you. Bring it back for any further discussion by the council. If not, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That passes by a 5-0 vote.
Item 13, the city manager report. Steve.
This is the monthly city manager report. The only anomaly, and it's there in excruciating detail, and I'm prepared to answer any question you may have. I do want to report because by city policy, there was a variance that I'm authorized by section 23-20.2 of our zoning ordinance. It allows me to approve requests for adjustments if granted that would decrease or increase of not more than 25% of required setback on certain properties. So at 19035 Cerro Villa Drive, just to notify you that I did approve a decrease in the minimum interior rear yard setback of the property from 25 feet to 19 feet. And it's for basically a 460 square foot tall attached solid roof patio cover. And we decreased the minimum interior side setback from 13 to about approximately 10 feet. Both those are within the 25% parameters, and I can provide any additional details. But for purposes of the policy and the zoning ordinance, I had to announce this at a public meeting.
Thank you.
We've received no complaints from the resident, and they were supported by the residents, by the neighbors.
Thank you. I reviewed those plans today and look forward to that project. Thank you. Item 14, mayor and council member matters. I'm going to go ahead and start with Councilman Zimmerman.
Okay. So let me go back over 2 items that I wanted to highlight. Well, maybe 3. September 15th, we had the Rotary Gala, which was a fair in the town center here. It was the first year that this gala had been put on, and my understanding is this is going to be something that the Rotary Club of Villa Park tries to promote each year. Given that we haven't had our Villa Park picnic the last couple of years, and we're looking for a community event that brings everybody together. It's got great fair games for the kids. My kids, a lot of kids in the area came by and had a fantastic time. So I said that it's been talked about that this will be promoted. I believe that's what Janine Dunn, that's what she said about the promotion of this in the future, that it will be continued. And I heartily endorsed the event. It was fantastic. I had a great time. I know Councilmember Miles was there also to support. And then the other two things I wanted to talk about relate to our Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts in Villa Park. Fantastic organizations that we have here in the city promoting our youth and preparing them for the future. The Troop 850 had what they call Banana University. It's a leadership camp they host for their members. They've been doing it for many, many years. It brings all of the upper level scouts in to teach each other about leadership, to discuss the qualities that they need to promote within their organization and talk about the upcoming year and their futures. It's a fantastic event. Dave Kyle, who's a former Scoutmaster, is leading that and did a fantastic job with them. And then the Cub Scouts, PAC 850, kicked off their school year this year last week, and I got invited to go speak with the Arrow of Light, the Webelos 2 den, about community government. Their interest in what we're doing to find out about what issues impact the city of Villa Park, and in fact all cities. It was fantastic to see a group of young kids taking an interest. We talked about their key issues, which were primarily centered around the environment. I know we've had some issues that we've talked about just amongst the council in terms of developments nearby, stuff that we haven't necessarily had determining say on, but that certainly matter to us and our future. And it was great to see that reinforcement just from you talking about that, the same, what's important to them and in their future. So Troop 850, PAC 850, both doing fantastic things in our community and helping out, as always. So those are my reports for this month.
Thank you. Councilman Collier.
September 5th, I attended the ACCOC, or it's American Council of Cities, Orange County Chapter Energy and Environment Committee. Meeting was held down in the city of Tustin. At the Energy and Environment Committee, we discussed a number of issues, primarily associated with water, wastewater, and stormwater. Then on September 16th, as I previously mentioned, I hosted the Santa Ana Watershed Ambassador Program. This was held down at the Orange County Water District and included a number of councilmen and mayors and so forth, and even some County Board of Supervisor staff. And the key item was discussing why cities and county elected officials need to get more engaged in water issues, particularly in the Santa Ana River watershed, because of its everything that we do as local elected officials is interrelated with water, whether it's drainage programs or drainage projects, water conservation, and a number of other things. It's all interrelated, and we can more effectively manage our water resources the more we know. And that's my report.
Councilwoman Miles.
Thank you. So I attended the Rotary Day in the Park, and I can thank you for inviting me. Had a lovely time. I can see that this could really grow and become a really great event. And Chronic Tacos was great, and you had the bounce houses, and I bid on there's a lot of alcohol there that you could bid on and win, even though you had to pay for it. But it was a lot of fun, so thank you for inviting me. I wanted to mention, and perhaps because I know your foundation meeting is tomorrow, so December 8th is going to be a snowstorm in Villa Park.
Nice.
So there's going to be a minor blizzard on December 8th right here in the center between the hours of 12 and 4. So we're doing our first annual Winter Wonderland. So on Saturday, the 7th, Santa will board the fire engine and go around and do this Santa tour. And if you miss him during that day, then if you come here, Santa will bring his snow and
From the North Pole.
from the North Pole, and bring your ice skates, because we will be ice skating as well. So that will be on the 8th, right here at the center, free of charge. This is our first time doing this. And then, of course, you know the 15th is the boat parade. But we're really looking forward to the event. I had to make sure the weather was going to be right, so I finally finalized with Santa that December 8th between the hours of 12 and 4. And we'd love to see you all down here, and hopefully we'll get some of the schools involved. Would like to reach out to them if they're interested in maybe having cookie decorating contests or hot chocolate or something like that. So if they could reach out to me, that would be great, and we can set something up. So really looking forward to that. And then just a reminder about November 6th is the flu shot clinic, free of charge. We're gearing it towards Villa Park residents. Of course, we'll accept anybody, but we really want to make sure we get our elderly and our small young children. And when it runs out, we're done. So 3:30, it opens, the doors open, and that's here as well. That's it. Bring your mittens.
Bring your mittens.
Bring your mittens.
Bring your mittens.
The ice skating won't be cold, but the snow will.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, last Saturday night, I was fortunate enough to attend with my wife the Villa Park Women's League annual board dinner, where spouses attend the event with their wives. Had a great evening at the Cantac residence, and we really appreciate them opening up their home. As most of you know, Villa Park Women's League is very active in the community and does a lot to help our community. A couple other things to note. I'm assuming everyone is aware that Pat Buttress has gone through some back surgery. She's recovering at home. We send her our sincerest best wishes for her speedy recovery. I see her on Facebook and so forth, but we all realize she's Don Wagner's right arm for Villa Park, so shout out to her. Also want to give a shout out to Republic Services. Our relationship with them generated $6,763 for our foundation recently, so I'd like to thank them, and also Dan and Mark for their support in the community as well. So, and then also one last thing, Halloween Fest is October the 26th here in the town center, so look forward to all the little goblins and ghosts and especially the costume. They're all cute. That's it.
Well, I'll keep this brief.
I have a couple of, you go ahead and do yours.
I defer to you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. There are a couple of announcements I neglected to make. First of all, the Orange County Sanitation District is having their State of the District meeting or presentation at 8 o'clock on October 25th at Mile Square Golf Course. And I believe I'll be receiving a email invitation on that. Also, the groundwater recycling system final expansion groundbreaking ceremony will be held down at the Orange County Water District on November 8th, 2019 at 9 a.m. So I believe you'll be getting an announcement on that as well. So I guess you have.
All right, two things. Attended the Human Resources Committee meeting as I previously reported on, and I will be reporting to the full board in the absence of the chairman, which is exciting for me. It's the first time I'll be reporting before the entire board on our committee's efforts. That'll be on Thursday, and then just the other day, Steve and I had a very nice meeting with Bruce Channing, the new director, executive director, correct me if I'm wrong if his title is different, of the ACCOC, and the direction that they're going, and hopefully we have an opportunity to work with them, and it seems like they're going in the right direction. And in the interest of time, that's all I have. I do want to give a special warning to gentlemen that are out there that have not gone and seen their doctor recently. I just had two friends of mine, 149 and 150, both passed away from cancer. And not to be a downer, but these two gentlemen are leaving behind a high school-aged son, a wife, an elementary school-aged son, and a wife. And though I don't think negligence in any way, shape, or form is on their part, but it was certainly a message to me to go out and make sure I got myself checked, and I would encourage everybody to do the same. Don't put off what you can prevent. On that note, I'd like to thank everybody for their volunteerism, their commitment to the community, our schools, our volunteers, our teachers, our parents, and our city staff. Be safe. God bless.
Vince, isn't it National Walk to School Day on October 2nd?
It is.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for getting that in. On that note, I believe we're adjourned.